Hello and welcome back. My name is Menke, and today we are going to be taking a look at another video. This one is going to be another Lost in the Pod video. It is going to be 4 ways British and American houses are very different. The last one we did was on grocery stores, I believe. So I do like this guy's channel a lot, and so I thought this would be a good opportunity to take a look at another one of his videos. You guys seem to like the last one, so if you end up liking this one, please smash that like button and hit the subscribe button. I would really appreciate it. Only about 7% of my viewers are subscribed, so if you could hit that subscribe button, it would be much appreciated. But I'm gonna get the ears on and we are gonna get right into this video. Let's go. All right, digging the yellow shirt. Here we are.
And tea drinkers that we are, we love our kettles, don't we? But they're not just any kettles. These are ones you plug in and then hit the switch to turn on the plug, because I forgot to mention that our plug sockets also have switches.
Huh?
Hello, I'm Lawrence, and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to houses, the things we live inside. If you're watching this video, it's quite likely you're either inside a house right now, or you're near one, because otherwise you wouldn't probably have internet access quite as easily. To anyone that might be new to this channel, come on in, get yourself a cup of tea. This isn't a genuine offer to come into my house. I'm just saying, join the channel. This is good. And hello to everybody
I prefer coffee,
who's been here
but
a long time. Today we're going to look at several ways in which British and American houses are very, very different. Having lived in the United States for over 11 years, I've lived in my fair share of houses here, just as I did in Britain. So I think I have a decent grasp of how houses work. Even tiny ones like this one, which is about 400 square feet. I'm joking, this is a professional studio. Don't question me. And so without further ado, let's take a look at 4 ways that British and American houses are very, very different. Neither Britain nor America is devoid of variety when it comes to their housing styles, and that's because, well, with each sort of passing phase of history comes new designs to meet new needs and just new style preferences. And because of this variety, I'm not going to cover every single one of them, because that would keep us all here until next Wednesday, which would be good for my metrics, but not good for your sanity. So let's take a look at how some of the housing styles do vary from country to country. In Britain, a lot of the distinctive styles are also tied up with the period in which they were built. So you could go all the way back to the Tudor period, and you do find Tudor housing dotted around here and there. In fact, if you go to the city of York, for example, there's quite a lot of sort of Tudor buildings there. They're quite ornate with wood paneling, and they're the sort of place that you might imagine that Shakespeare lived. But wood is less indicative of British houses than you would see in America, where wood is actually quite a common material for building houses. In Britain, from about the Georgian period onward, you're going to see quite a lot of brickwork. Georgian period houses absolutely exist. People live in them, but they tend to be these opulent-looking houses that have notable pops of white rectangle, which are just the windows. It's very nice. They look like dolls' houses that you should live in. But then come the Victorian age, we started moving toward these sort of like orangey brick buildings, right? And a lot of them were terraced houses, which is what Americans would call row houses. And they just look very industrial, right? You could imagine a chimney sweep going up and getting his face covered in soot. And then we move into the Edwardian period, where houses are sort of similar to those of the Victorian age. They're just lighter colours with more chimney sweeps, if Mary Poppins is anything to go by. Now, during World War II, when the Nazis bombed the ever-loving crap out of us, a lot of the houses went boom. And then after World War II, there was a housing boom. And you started to see a build-up of new, more simple houses, kind of like the one I grew up in. Now, that's a castle. That didn't happen. But I grew up in something more like this. That's not Lawrence's actual house.
It's like a townhouse.
Fairy tales may suggest, most of us have never lived in a chocolate box house, but those do exist. A chocolate box house is the kind of house you might see in the Cotswolds, right? It's very quaint looking, it's got thatch roofing, and it looks like this. And if, like me, you're wondering why it's called a chocolate box house, yet it doesn't look edible, it goes back to the 1950s/60s, when chocolate boxes would have on their facade a kind of depiction of a beautiful English countryside. And these types of houses would often feature on said box. Now again, this is by no means an entire repository of British houses. Neither is the following an entire repository of American houses. It's just the more common ones that you will see when you are here. So Cape Cod houses, you know these types of houses, right? They're the ones with the wood paneling down the side. And I said a moment ago that, you know, America makes good use of wood in this country because there's just so much of it. So many woodlands around the country, and it's a huge country from which to pull that resource. So they do, and it's cheap. But funnily enough, the Cape Cod style has its history with English settlers who came here in the 17th century and started building Cape Cod-style houses in New England. Now, during the post-World War II period, partly to provide, housing to veterans coming back from war, there was a revival of Cape Cod-style housing, and it started to be built not just in New England, but all along the East Coast and in the Midwest, and even out west. Anybody that's seen the Goonies will know that. And it was this style of housing that I first moved into when I moved to the United States. And I've got to say, even despite the Midwest winters, it was really warm. You'd think it would be quite drafty because of all of the gaps in the wood. You could go to specific streets or neighborhoods or areas of the United States and only find these houses for miles and miles. So I lived in one of those, but my grandparents-in-law lived in what is known as a ranch-style house. And these are sort of really low-down buildings, don't typically have 2 floors to them. And once again, these houses became popular after World War II. There was just generally a big sort of boom after World War II, again in the United States.
It's like a rambler.
The 20th century, though, did see more and more revivalism of old styles. So you had, mock Tudor, or should I say revival Tudor, which more or less replicated the kind of Tudor buildings that you would see in England with some differences. And I've seen those types of buildings in Boston, for example. I've also seen them in Indiana. As well as that, the 20th century saw colonial revivalism, though most people don't live in those houses. Maybe one day when I get that grand piano, I'll think about it. And so that's an extremely basic and rudimentary breakdown of some of the different styles that you'll see in each country. But there's one big difference between all of the houses in both countries, and it's this.
I feel like there's more types of American houses than that,
though. It's time to face up to some home truths. Compared to America, Britain is microscopic. The United States is absolutely massive and needs to be stopped. And the same is true of each country's average house size, right? So in the United States, houses just tend to be way more spacious. And we're not just talking about millionaire houses here. We're talking about your average house. So the average size of an American single-family home is approximately 1,600 square feet. In the UK, we're looking at an average of about 900 square feet. So why the difference?
My apartment's
Well,
about
reason is
900 square
population
feet.
density. In Britain, we're
That's
all a
insane.
bit packed together. Actually, that partially accounts for why everything is smaller in Britain. Not everything, not the cups. But in America, there's just so much land, and relative to that land, so few people. So, make them as large as you want, and they do. They're huge. But also, a large majority of American houses are relatively new, meaning that they were able to benefit from, building methods and materials that other countries like Britain were not. And the post-war expansion of American highways meant that this was enhanced even more. Those materials could be moved around the country more easily, and of course, this ushered in a more grand housing development. Now, all size aside, try saying that after 10 tepid tequilas, things become subtly different once you're inside the houses of either country.
The gadgets.
Is gadgets the right word? I don't know. I'll have to fire my graphics team. Either way, we're essentially talking about accessories, the things you have in your house that make that house work, even when you're doing the house work. So for example, airflow, right? America's bigger on its overhead fans and air conditioning units. We don't usually use those. I mean, we like to punish ourselves, especially in the summer. But we can crack a window open and it doesn't get oppressively hot. Always. And so we've mostly been fine with this situation. It does mean that insects get in. So daddy longlegs will get in the house and mosquitoes, but it's a small price to pay for not having air conditioning. I actually quite like air conditioning now that I've lived in the US. Speaking of insects, you also don't see...
Yeah, I live in Florida. I'm not going without air conditioning.
Hence why they're getting in. In America, they're virtually in every house, but then again, in Britain, we don't have black widows or brown recluses or the types of mosquitoes that make your face go like this. So I can see why it's justified. I mean, you still get ants, or is that just me? Not sure how they get in. Maybe cracks in the wall, or maybe through the plug sockets. The plug sockets, of course, are different in both countries too. In Britain, you have the 3-pronged outlets, and in America, you sometimes have 3, but occasionally 2, and they're smaller in America than they are in Britain. That's one of the few things about which you can say that. Separate taps, of course, for hot and cold water. Americans combine them all into one. Where's the logic in that? I'm joking. And while we're on the subject of sinks, most British sinks don't have that sort of food waste disposal thing that you press the button.
Garbage disposal.
Amazing. That was one of the best things I discovered after I didn't discover it. Somebody else came up with the idea and I just used it. But it's amazing. It's just so pleasing to know that all of that gunk gets broken down. And just don't put your hamster in there. I've learned that lesson from someone else. I didn't do it, just read about it on Reddit. Letterboxes. Firstly, Americans don't call them letterboxes, but mailboxes, and typically don't have them on the door, but outside in the garden, yard. The garden/yard is different. Often smaller in Britain, but very well kept up, depending on the family. And just massive yards here with, mesh fences and things like that, or picket fences. Back inside, a lot of properties in in the United States will have walk-in closets that are built into the actual walls of the house, whereas
That's
in
what I
Britain, you
have.
bring your own closet/wardrobe to put your clothes in, and
What?
that takes up more space. I've just realised. So we're shooting ourselves in the foot every step of the way.
I have a walk-in
Except
closet.
when it comes to washing machines and dryers. How cool is this? We combine them both into one giant cube, whereas America has two separate cubes. And
Yeah, but
tea
the
drinkers
one
that we are, we
sucks.
love our kettles, don't we? But they're not just any kettles. These are ones you plug in and then hit the switch to turn on the plug, because I forgot to mention that our plug sockets also have switches. And then, you know, you turn it on, don't need a stovetop, and it heats up. Just like that. You've got your water, Bob's your uncle, pour it into a mug, there's your cup of tea. In America, you do have the stovetop kettles, and part of me likes that because it does this really pleasing whistling sound at the end. Now, if you were paying attention during that list, you may have noticed that I touched on some of the terminological differences when it comes to housing in either country. And that brings us on to our final entry.
The words.
It wouldn't be Britain and America if they weren't two countries separated by a common language, and the same is true of the housing world. So let's finish with a rapid fire round looking at those very words. So here in Chicago, I live in a flat, except in America, they don't call it flat, it's called an apartment. Something else that you'll find in America, though, are these condominiums or condos, if you don't fancy saying a word that has condom in it. And we do have those in Britain, they're usually called common hold properties. And I suppose most British people wouldn't go around using that term, whereas you actually hear the term condo quite a lot. It's been suggested to me that I move into a condo, and it sounds good. I mean, when I first heard the term, I thought it sounded like I might be moving onto a lakeside boat or something like that. It is like an apartment, but it's one you would buy. It's real estate. Now, as a child and young adult, I grew up in a house.
It's not worth it. Get a house.
A semi-detached house. That's when you have a house adjoined to one other house on one side, but not on the other side. In the United
duplex?
States, this is known quite simply as a duplex, which is
Hey.
not the move. If it is adjoined on both sides with another house, then you are part of a line of houses that are known as terraced houses in Britain. In America, they're known as row
Townhouses.
houses because
What?
they're all in a row, presumably. Then there's council housing in Britain versus the projects in the United States, and that's just another way of saying public housing. To control the electricity flow in Britain, you have the mains power. In America, you have the grid power. And what if you're sick and tired of the place that you're living in and you just want to relocate somewhere else? In America, you would just simply move. In Britain, you'd move house. And on that note, I'm going to move out to my outro transition because this is the end of the video. Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this from your house right now, or just if you're not. Leave a comment either way, and don't forget to
Watching
hit the
from the
subscribe button
apartment
so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. A big reminder, by the way, if you want to keep up with me on a day-to-day basis and just see some of the stupid trivia that I come out with, follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS. You won't regret it entirely.
Yeah, check this guy's channel out. He's got good stuff. I like it. All right, awesome video as usual from this guy. I like the Lost in the Pond videos quite a bit. I don't know if that I've ever heard the term row housing for an American kind of style housing, but anyways, I learned a few things here about the British style housing for sure. But thank you guys so much for checking this out. If you ended up liking this video, hit that like button and the subscribe button. But I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Keep an eye out for more videos, and when I go live on Twitch, link will be in the description for all of the socials and good stuff down there. But yeah, we'll see you later. Peace, love, cheers, bye.